believe that we're live here. While I'm waiting for confirmation, let you guys let us know if our audio's coming in or not coming in or whatever. While waiting for that, I want to send everyone over to hankstrange.com. Go there, sign up for our email list. The website is the best way to keep up with us and all the things that we're getting up to. So, check out hankstrange.com. So, for example, you can get patches over there at hankstrange.com. You can buy them right there. If you're looking for like our t-shirts and stuff like that, it's from Ballistic Ink. I believe they're having some problems with the website, so that should be up soon. But in the meanwhile, you can get the patches. So there you go. I also want to thank Franklin Armory for sponsoring the podcast here. Big shout out to those guys. We appreciate them doing it. That being said, I am going to smash the open button and get going on this show.
Welcome back to the Hank Strange Situation.
All right, make sure you guys subscribe, thumbs up, ring the bell so you can be notified every time we go live. We've got two new guests above Richard and myself. And let's see, it's Owen, and then we've got Knox, and then from the American Suppressor Association. Guys, we do this thing called Jazz Hands. You don't have any choice. That's why I didn't tell you about it. You have to do it. There you go, Jazz Hands. We are live. I hope you got your big girl panties on. This is episode 598 of the Who Moved My Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Hank Strange. Like I said, we've got Owen and Knox of American Suppressor Association, as well as Richard Hoffman of BWE Firearms joining us here. What's up, everyone?
I'm just here to cause trouble.
Yeah, well... don't make me set Lola on you. Shout out to everyone who's out there joining us. Please smash those thumbs up. Share this video if you can. If you have, you guys could take general suppressor questions, right? Not just the association stuff, right? You guys know about these cans, I'm assuming.
A little bit.
A little bit. You better. Yeah. So if you guys have suppressor questions, if you've got questions about, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened in our world when it comes to silencers, suppressors, whatever you want to call it. I think these guys will be able to answer that. Let me see. I'm going to introduce Owen. I think you're the one that reached out to me, right?
Yeah. I reached out after one of your episodes with our buddies there at Liberty Suppressors. Dave and his family, they were early participants in starting the ASA. They were at some of the very early formative meetings. So, we've always followed them. And I saw that and I said, hey, let's talk suppressors.
Okay, cool. So, thanks for doing that. What do you do at the American Suppressor Association?
Yeah, so I've been with ASA for about 4 years now, after about 10, almost 11 years at a Gemtech. You didn't know that name. For 11 years. Moved over to ASA, and I'm the director of outreach. So my job is to interact with our members and connect them with industry, and just share as much about the suppressor industry as we can with them. Okay,
I hope that everyone heard that, because someone who shall remain nameless, Richard, was making a lot of noise just now. So yeah, he's still doing it. No, stop it, Richard. Mute yourself. So, all right. Let's get to Knox. Knox, tell the audience out there who you are and what you do at the ASA.
Yeah, man. So I'm Knox Williams, the executive director at American Suppressor Association. This was kind of my idea back when I used to work at Advanced Armament. Wanted to be able to hunt with suppressor in Georgia. Knew we couldn't. Knew that the best way to do that was form an association, kind of a nonprofit group where we could all work together. So fast forward about 9 years, and here we are.
Okay, awesome. So I don't know which one of you guys wants to do it. I mean, either one of you is welcome to. Can you explain to the folks out there what the ASA, American Suppressor Association, is? Obviously, you said it started in 2011. What else should folks know about you guys?
Yeah, man. So essentially, we are kind of the nonprofit that represents the suppressor community, and that's everything from manufacturers and distributors to dealers and consumers. So our whole is advanced pro-suppressor reform. At the state level and the federal level, through things like legalizing suppressor ownership in all 50 states, legalizing suppressor hunting in all 50 states. For a while, we worked on shall sign. That was when the CLIO certification was still a thing. We helped get rid of CLIO certification. And that was a bit of a cluster. There were a lot of moving parts when that happened. We can get into that later, but at the federal level, our goal is to get suppressors taken out of the National Firearms Act. They never should have been there in the first place. They absolutely should be taken out. And really, at our core, like, that's our mission, right? That's the end game that we're trying to see. In the meantime, while we work on that, we want to see wait times decrease. We want to get rid of the tax. We want to do a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, all focuses on suppressors, and that's intentional because we wanted to separate our issue from other core Second Amendment issues that might turn off legislators at both the state and federal levels who say, I don't touch gun stuff. Well, this is a bit different than gun stuff, and it's been good for us in terms of opening doors across the aisle for folks that generally wouldn't vote pro-gun. A lot of them pro-suppressor.
Right. Yeah. And while you were talking there, I'm trying to roll in the website. There isn't a website. America Suppressor Association. What is it? It's .com, right?
Yeah.
For the folks who want to go there, there's lots of information on there. I'll probably refer back to this, or if you guys, while we're talking here, if there's something that comes up and it's on the website, if you let me know, I'll be happy to go to the website and point it out to people. I'm guessing that's the reason why, obviously, you guys want to come on, talk about a lot of things that are going on, not just in the gun community, in the gun world. Obviously, like, we've got the highest sales levels in, I don't know, ever, right?
Yeah.
Just keeps breaking records. Just this 2020 is just that kind of year.
Suppressors are no different. Suppressors are trending that way this year too. We may not hit the highest levels. 2016 was a real peak just because of the legislation that was happening. But rule changes, ATF 41F, and we can get into that one too. But this will probably be the second highest year in history, and it may actually, talking to some of our dealers and distributors, it may eclipse 2016 this year as well.
Really? Okay. So you're saying that, like, 2016 was the highest year ever?
Yeah. Okay. To date, 2016. ATF publishes their NFA data. Some of their NFA data every year in August. They publish a Firearms Commerce in the United States report, and in that it includes a bunch of NFA data. But 2016, they received about 312,000 Form 4 applications.
Okay.
Suppressors generally make up about 80%, a little over 80% of all the Form 4s. PRs are kind of the other big chunk, and then you got a few transferable machine guns and short barrel shotguns and things mixed in there. But suppressors are the bulk. Okay. Now, for those that remember, in 2016, Knox was kind of talking about the CLEO sign-off, that law enforcement sign-off. So ATF for several years, 2014, 2015, was proposing a rule, ATF 41P, which P stands for proposed. And that made some changes to how Form 4 applications, Form 1 applications were filed. Most notably, it was the trust applications. Prior to that, you could submit a trust, and because trusts are an entity, not a person, they didn't require any fingerprints or photographs to go with it. Instead, a NICS check was usually run by the person picking the suppressor up once the Form 4 was approved. So ATF proposed changing that, and they proposed requiring all responsible parties on a trust. So anyone with access to the firearm trust would have to get fingerprinted, photographed, and also get a CLEO signature, which, like for instance, my trust, I've got my brother who lives in Los Angeles. How's he supposed to get a CLEO sign-off in Los Angeles? He can easily send me some fingerprints and photographs.
Yeah. I mean, imagine, and there's companies that are in those trusts that, I don't know, they have maybe 20, 30 people or something, I guess.
Yeah, there were definitely some trusts. I know personally of a couple of, like, gun clubs where they had every gun club member in the trust just so they could move stuff around. That's a question for the lawyers as to whether that's a good idea or not. I'm not a lawyer, so that's really
not a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. No. We can all say that's probably not a good idea, but we'll leave it to lawyers to issue the legal advice.
Right.
So anyhow, with that proposed rule, The ATF kind of sat on it. They tweaked it. They had a big comment period. That was where ASA really got involved. And Knox can really give some of the more finite details on exactly what ASA did to help get rid of that Clio sign-off. But in the end, January 4th of 2016, they announced that they were finally going to implement that rule as ATF 41F, which is F for final rule. And the deadline for that implementation was mid-July, so they kind of gave about a 6-month grace period that from when they said, yeah, it's going to be final, to when it actually took effect. And so that's when really the sales really spiked. ATF in that time period received 276,000 Form 4s. I mean, basically about 2.5 year buying period. I mean, what would normally occur in about 2.5 years? So 2015, they received 130,000.
Right.
Or so, a huge spike in demand. And then once that rule took effect, the demand really dropped off. They only received another 36,000 Form 4s the rest of that year. So you can really tell that ATF 41F was what spiked that demand.
Okay.
And then 2017, we kind of returned to roughly normal. We were about 110,000 Form 4s total. So just about a 20%, 15% decrease from what 2015 was. So, again, this year our forecast is somewhere about 280,000 Form 4s. So pretty close to that peak level, but we may exceed it.
Okay, there's a whole bunch of things. I'm sure folks out there may have some questions as well. Can we start here? Like, how about we let the folks know, like, what's the organizational structure of the ASA, right? Who's behind it? Is this a grassroots effort? What exactly are we talking about here?
Yeah, so we are somewhere in between, like a trade association and a grassroots effort. Right now, we've got 5,000 members, individual members of the public, who are in the association ballpark. And that's something that we're looking to grow. We were pretty successful in the past year of growing that about 1,200 or so. Our ideal spot is 20 to 30,000. That's kind of our target for now. And once we hit that, we'll continue to try to grow. But at our core, we represent the overwhelming majority of the industry. So right now we've got a board of directors of 15 folks, largely CEOs and owners of major, gun manufacturers and suppressor related companies. And we try to balance kind of the interests of the industry and the interests of the consumer, because, they align most of the time. They don't always. But, our job is whatever it is, as long as it's pro suppressor, we're pushing it.
Right. So like I'm taking a look here at and this is all information. You guys are putting all this stuff out there, right? So people can find this on the website. Yeah. I'm showing a page that you have here, your sponsors. I see the silencer shop. That looks like tier 1. So I'm gonna say that's like the big dog in there. I see Daniel Defense as well in there as a tier 2, and then a bunch of different companies: NASGW, Dead Air, Gemtech, Barnauls, Gearfire, Lipsies, Orchid Advisors, Rugged Suppressors, SIG, Silencer Co. This symbol looks like here, Surefire, and YHM, right? So companies. I'm going to say, I guess the bigger companies in the suppressor world. Is that accurate? Yeah. Or at least in manufacturing?
Yeah, and we don't discriminate. We want everybody to be involved.
Okay.
Whether they're big or small, that's why we have different tier structures within our sponsorship, because we want everybody to feel like they have a seat at the table and the ability to help, us steer the ship. At the end of the day, we represent them and their interests, and we want to make sure that their voice is heard.
Okay, so any individual can sponsor, or how does this work? Is it like sponsorship, membership? How do those work, and how do the sponsorships work? Because you've got tiers here, so I'm assuming the higher tiers, more money, something like that. That's good.
Yeah, so break it into like corporate sponsorship structure and an individual sponsorship, more membership based. So for our corporate sponsors, that operates on a calendar year. We have a threshold for a monetary contribution that will buy you voting rights within the association. And essentially that allows you to help us elect the board of directors.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from the tier 3 up, they all have voting rights within the association.
Mm-hmm.
Anything below that tier 4 and down, they don't, but we still like to get them involved as much as possible. So we allow them to join our board calls and things like that. And any sort of in-person meetings that we host, generally at SHOT Show, in our annual meeting, things like that, we'll invite them to those as well.
Okay.
On the public membership side, that generally operates on a 365-day year period. So if you signed up today, your membership would run until July 8th of next year. It's your pretty generic basic membership, $35 for a year, $100 for 3 years, $1,000 for a lifetime membership. And we're really working right now on trying to build some of the perks up, discounts with different companies, and kind of exclusive opportunities for folks that do become members for us.
Okay, very cool. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Owen, or if you had any questions, Rich, feel free to jump in here with any questions. One that comes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Owen.
Yeah, I'll just jump in kind of to touch on Knox's statements about the membership. So again, the public membership, that's, essentially you're funding the advocacy work that Knox and I do. We're on the road 100 days a year normally. This year, obviously, our travel kind of cut off. In fact, I haven't been anywhere since the SHOT Show. But in a normal year, we're traveling. We're on the road. We're in the states. We're in the state legislatures. We're in the Capitol in D.C. We're at ATF headquarters. We're meeting with those people representing the desires and the needs of suppressor owners and suppressor manufacturers and distributors and dealers. And so that's really what that membership is helping fund. A plane ticket to Washington, D.C. for most of us is a $500 endeavor, maybe more. And so, your $35 keeps you from having to buy that plane ticket and get there yourselves, because we're there. Your interests.
Are you guys like lobbyists? Are you just doing a little bit of everything? Just, I'm trying to wrap my head around the whole thing. Are you like the NRA? What would we compare like other organizations that are out there? You like the GOA, for example? How does everything work back there? And how many people are actually there in the actual structure of the organization?
Yeah. So right now you're looking at our full-time staff. Our goal is
you two guys.
Yep.
That's it. Fighting for suppressors.
That's it.
So we've got some contractors as well, and we had a contract lobbyist on retainer in DC for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Who was great, and frankly, like when we started up in DC, we'd never gotten our feet wet. We needed someone to kind of show us the ropes and teach us how it's done. And he was fantastic with that. Over the course of the past, 9 years at this point, we've really kind of learned the game, so to speak. Our strength isn't, we're never going to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room. We're never going to wield that big stick. We're the subject matter, right? We know suppressor advocacy forward and backwards, and we've really shaped the arguments that have pushed the dial at both the state and the federal levels. So we go in, we draft legislation. We push that legislation, but our strength really comes from working with other organizations who do have those built-in relationships and who do carry those big sticks. So one of our first things was, getting in with the guys at the NRA. Like it or not, and they definitely have some flaws and things that need to be addressed. And that's outside of the scope of this conversation.
Right, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I would say that the reason why I'm interested in it is because I think it's a good idea to have some organization out there every day thinking about this section, right? I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. Suppressors are not legal everywhere, but in a lot more states nowadays, right? I think they're awesome. I think every single firearm should have a suppressor on it. But, someone's got to be out there representing, somehow fighting for this particular thing. But just because, we're getting attacked when it comes to the Second Amendment on so many different levels. So I don't find a problem with you guys working with the NRA. That's a place where a lot of gun people go to, versus, let's say, like SHOT Show, that's inside the industry. The folks out there who are just into guns can go to NRA, and I believe that I came to at least one, if not two, events that you guys put on during NRA that's usually off-site, right?
Yeah. We
Yeah.
do an annual meeting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Because I think I at least remember doing one in Kentucky, I think.
Yep. At Knob Creek.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So you guys are doing a little bit of everything here. You've got maybe guys out there blocking legal like bills that are trying to go in effect. All kinds of different things you guys are up to, right?
Yeah. So that's and we work with the NRA, Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, National Foundation, other groups in state as and really try to work out a team strategy of, okay, what's the political dynamic, what's the political makeup, who's going to be the most effective targeting what specific legislators, and we really try our battle plan and execute.
Yeah. Richard, Owen, you guys have something here? I'm looking.
Yeah, I think one of the things you'll notice maybe Knox's shirt. Pretty much on the 1 year anniversary of Virginia.
Let me go. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Virginia was a huge Second Amendment battleground state last year. A year ago, even 6 months ago, in that special session there last year, and then the regular session this year, and Knox and I spent weeks on the ground in Virginia. Working that and defending suppressors specifically, right alongside a lot of other groups, BCDL and NRA and other orgs that were looking at the broader 2A issue there in Virginia. But we wanted to make sure that suppressors being on the docket, that they were talking originally about banning and even confiscating or requiring legally owned suppressors to be turned in. We wanted to make sure that specific issue was also getting attention. And didn't get lost in that bigger conversation about 2A, and that's we were there organizing gun owners and suppressor owners, and we went out and canvassed dealers and specifically targeted dealers and individuals that were in some of the key swing districts there, and then we walked the halls for days of the office buildings there, the legislative office buildings, and took meetings with members on both sides of the issues, making sure that the people that supported suppressors continued to support them, and the people that were maybe more anti-gun, we spent some time educating them, and in the final drafts, we talked to a few members that said, hey, we specifically changed some of the language in these bills because of the education. We didn't realize that they were so tightly regulated at the federal level. And so because of that, we're going to back off, trying to ban them. Knox, you got anything to add on Virginia?
Yeah, and you're touching on specifically the confiscation aspect of it. It's things that legislators often don't think through, the ramifications of their legislation. They get an idea, they push it through, legislative council, and pretty much whatever they want to do, they push. But it's easy for us to recognize pretty immediately there's a lot of logistical issues if you're going to try to confiscate, not the least of which is these are federally controlled items that are in legal possession, and you're going to have state authorities take illegal possession of them. And we made sure that we were highlighting that point, which is something that we thought about.
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of people out there that don't know any better don't realize we already have a lot of regulation, in my opinion, too much regulation out there. And these people just don't know. There's so many examples that we could give of that. By the way, Gorillas and Guns is out there. He says he looks like he's wearing a Virginia Sic Semper Tyrannis shirt.
Yep.
There you go. Got it. Gorillas and Guns. Got that right on. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to try to get... Lawrence Lorwick says, free the suppressors, defund the ATF.
Hey, Hank.
What?
Bozeman 5K asked an interesting question. I know I get this all the time. Is a trust still worth setting up?
Good question.
And I know what I always tell people. No. Unless
you say no?
I say no.
Okay.
One, as an individual, I don't trust anybody enough to give them something that's federally in my name. I don't care who you are.
And I'll say, it depends. Yeah, if you're just an individual looking to acquire a suppressor, and at this point the process would be essentially the same. If you were just an individual applying versus a trust, a single person trust. In my case, my wife is a shooter. She has firearms and actually worked with me at Gemtech for a while. And so, in the case of that, having a trust is great because we can have dual possession. So she can possess. But yeah, I'm not going to go put all my friends and, my entire gun club on my trust.
Yeah.
Some people will talk about the benefits of a trust in terms of handing it down in the future when you pass on. A lot of people may not know that there is a Form 4 process for, willing it to a lawful heir. It's done through a Form 5. It's a tax-exempt transfer. So there is a tax-exempt way to pass those on.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's something I didn't know.
An attorney may tell you, well, it's easier in a trust because you don't have to go through that process because, a beneficiary becomes a trustee. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so that's something for the legal advice, the lawyers to talk about. But, there may be some benefits to having a trust depending on your particular situation. So, definitely research it, talk to people, and figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, I would say trusts are something. So this is kind of like a separate issue, but if you think about generational wealth, right, which is the real wealth. If you want to pass the wealth onto your heirs, your successors, your children, however you want to put it, that's where trusts kind of come in. And there's like very specific law about trusts in America. And I think for the most part, they're good ideas, So, and they were a very good idea until they made these new rules. In the situation of Lola and myself, it's just the two of us, and then we have two boys, which they just now became adults, right? So they're at like 21, and we've got one that's coming behind him at 20. I might start thinking about that, but I wouldn't want a ton of people in the trust either, just because of what you guys said earlier, that every single person who's on there, you're gonna have to then go through this process, right? Which luckily I've already, Lola and I already did a few things before that, but we have new things coming in that we have to think about. Okay, what are we doing with those now?
Yeah, and I will say the transfer process, of course, for an individual from the ATF side of things, there's less chance of errors and other things like that might delay your transfer by being individual versus trust. Do you have all your trust documents in order? Does every RP have a clean background? Did they all fill out the responsible person questionnaire correctly, or did they type? Do they have a common name like John Smith that's makes them prone to getting delayed on NICS checks and things like that?
Does the Schedule A have the right stuff on it?
Yeah.
Each
I run into that one all the time.
Yeah, each one of those things can anywhere along that chain that you cause a delay is just going to delay your transfer.
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons to trust versus individual.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what you guys will think about this, but you guys are like your top tier sponsor, Silencer Shop, right? Silencer Shop does a lot of work to help folks out there with this stuff, right or wrong?
Yes.
Yeah. And they've certainly streamlined the process, and there are other companies out there that do similar, perform similar services, or there's dealers that have access to similar services. So I'd say it's not just Silencer Shop, but they've certainly pioneered what they've done, and there's certainly the kiosks and things like that. My has got one.
People in the gun world getting up on the internet, that's so amazing. Who would have thought about that is actually a thing? Using those internets, using technology. Because really, honestly, guns are, and suppressors, man, we're talking old technology here.
Yep.
We're not even talking, this is not super sophisticated. There's really not a lot of chips. Well, there's no chips. I'm trying to think about this. I'm not a fan of smart guns. So I don't think there should be chips involved unless we're talking about in your optics or something like that. That's the only place I see it. But yes, there's a lot of technology for folks out there, or websites and things like that, But we'll be happy to try to get answers to things. Night Train has a question here, unless you guys have one if you know that you want to go to. Night Train says, "Here's my question: is it still okay to say silencer as opposed to suppressor?" Sorry, I'm a bit old school.
Yeah, man. So from our perspective,
Mm-hmm.
silencer, suppressor, muffler, moderator, cam, call it whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the same thing. I think that we get too caught up as kind of a community of like,
Mm-hmm.
well, Maxim called it a silencer on his application when he named it a silencer. You call it a suppressor, and like that may be a little bit more accurate, but like
It's like clips in magazines. It seems it's almost to some people it's up there with clips in magazines, right? If you're huh?
Right? Because a clip at least is something, and a magazine is something that's slightly different, right?
Right.
But like silencer and suppressor, they refer to the exact same. And so when we formed, we were the American Silencer Association, right? Because we thought at the time, it's like, nobody's going to get what we're doing if we call ourselves the American Suppressor Association.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
After about 3 years of back and forth with legislators and going in and testifying in front of legislative bodies around the country, I got tired of being like, hey, my name's Knox Williams, and I'm with the American Silencer Association. By the way, nothing can actually silence the noise of a firearm. So that was a calculated decision on our part to change it to suppressor. But I mean, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. I think it is important to note, if you call it a silencer, nothing's going to silence a gun, right? It's still really, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Owen, I think, did you take your camera off?
I think he
there
just
you go. Yeah.
There we go. We're back.
Yeah.
We got a little Wi-Fi technical difficulty there.
No, that's cool. We're doing good here. So I don't know if anyone else wanted to chime in on the silencer suppressor thing. Yeah, it's two words that mean the same thing. It's like cans, also, right? Cans is also another. Yeah.
Call them anything cans when we're talking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really the only difference is the 68 or the NFA, the 34 Gun Control Act, says silencers.
Oh, okay.
And that's, I mean, as far as that goes, that's the only thing that makes a difference. I've heard a bunch of people say, well, you can't put suppressors on paperwork. I've never had one kicked back if I've put suppressor or silencer. It's never mattered.
Okay. So it doesn't matter on any of the official stuff when you're dealing with the...
Nothing that I've put through. I mean, they've never kicked it back.
Okay. All right.
The legal terminology is silencer. The technical terminology of what it does is a suppressor. Silencer is basically was a marketing scheme, a marketing brand name by Maxim. I just got incorporated into the legal language. So
and he was a victim of his own marketing success, right? Like, if he'd called them suppressors out of the gate, there's a high likelihood that they would not have been included in the National Firearms Act.
Right.
Really?
He put out marketing materials that says, like, shoot without noise. And this will eliminate the noise of your gunshot. And like the person still digging out of that hole.
Yeah.
You jackass.
If you're talking about the 22, subsonic or something, maybe it's really quiet. But yeah, everything else, not really. I mean, it's making it hearing safe, I think.
Trying to,
yeah.
And some don't even do that.
No. A lot of times I still wear Air Pro.
I was about to say that's another interesting thing. I think a lot of people, say like, oh, I can put a silencer suppressor on my gun, and then I don't have to wear Ear Pro. You absolutely still should. Unless it's single shot exposure on like like you said, like some 22s and stuff. If you're shooting more than just a little bit, and even if you're only shooting a little bit, protect your ears, right? It's kind of like saying, oh, well, I've got a seatbelt, I don't need an airbag. It's like, well, that's silly. They all contribute.
Yeah, definitely, because you're closer to that thing. So it may be kinder for your neighbors, I think, But if you're doing anything repetitive, you probably want to protect your ears as much as possible. The crazy thing about it is you can't really regrow those, what is it?
Hairs.
What is it called? Follicles or whatever that help us hear stuff? Yeah.
closest you can get is a cochlear implant, but like, who wants
Hi,
to spend
Lola.
that? Yeah.
Oh,
Who said hi?
that's Richard that says hi. I guess he could
can
see you
see
for
me?
some reason. I don't know. Yeah.
Not supposed
I
to
saw
be
your
silly.
arm.
Oh. Did we lose? Wait a second. Did we lose Owen? He looks frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Yeah. Okay. We'll probably get him back here.
man.
Don't worry. Yeah. Don't worry about it. This is why we got two of them. See, we got like redundancy here. We'll just leave him frozen up there in the corner, so
Yeah.
that he could still pretend that he was here. But I'm sure we're gonna get him back. Yeah. So with your hearing, man, you lose that. It's really tough to
Yeah.
get it back, right? You
Yeah.
know,
You're
so-
not. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to get it back. So
And never shoot steel plates
there he goes.
without hearing protection.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I made that mistake once at one of the subgun matches.
Mhm.
I was shooting my Uzi suppressed. Oh, it's suppressed. I don't need my hearing protection.
Right.
Man, took one blast at a group of steel plates, walked back to the bench, grabbed my ears, put them on, kept shooting.
Yeah, I mean, steel's going to ring. That's going to be loud. Yeah. That's going to be. I think that's going to be loud. And look, just the actions, for example, right? The actions in a lot of guns are really loud.
Yeah.
I think there's maybe some things you could do. Like the most I've seen is in 22s. There's a lot of stuff for the Ruger 1022. So you could do things to kind of like quiet down the noise or whatever, or buffer it. But for everything else, the action's going to be really loud. And then yes, if you're shooting at steel and so on. I know I once did. I think it was Silencer Co. that did this. They had a shoot, like a range day, organized where everyone was using suppressors at that range day, and I thought it was great because for anyone who was standing off from the shooting line, you could actually talk to each other.
Yeah.
But I would still say I think even I did that. If you go up there, I'm still putting AirPro on. Because when you're closer to all of that, it's pretty bad. So, yeah. Let's see. I don't know if there's any. Okay, Clint Sanders says just signed up. Thank you all, guys.
Thanks, Clint.
Assuming he signed up with you guys. Yep, that's great. Let's see. Brian Quick says. He said, since DC versus Heller, there hasn't been a win for the Pro 2A advocacy groups. Just defending against further restrictions on our privileges. Yes, privileges. They haven't been rights for decades. That's from Brian Quick. You guys want to respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Seems that way.
Yeah.
Seems that way.
And I'd say, like all advocacy, it hasn't been for lack of trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court denied a handful of cases recently, and
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it, 10
we can
cases?
push, and
Mhm.
deny it, then we're left waiting.
Yeah.
There has been good movement at the state, and that's really where the battleground is. Things move a lot quicker at the state level, and like honestly, the gridlock there's pros and cons to that. It's a double-edged sword at the federal level, right? It's very hard for us to push pro-gun legislation. Obviously, we saw that firsthand with the Hearing Protection Act, but it's also very hard for our opposition to push through anti-bills. If say Trump loses the election in November and the Senate flips, it will still be very difficult for anti-gunners to push through negative legislation.
Yeah.
There's some sort of solace in that, but nonetheless, like, we feel you, man. Like, we really need a landmark win. It has been too long.
Yeah.
Frankly, the biggest landmark win in our lifetime has probably been, in 2004 when the AR ban sunset. Which is sad. You know?
Yeah, there's a few victories there. You brought up the Hearing and Protection Act. Maybe we should take this opportunity to jump all the way into that little rabbit hole. So that way we can blame Knox.
It was my idea.
Really? Oh, yeah. Really? Was the Hearing Protection Act your idea? Literally?
Literally.
Okay.
Yeah,
explain that to us.
All right. So, obviously our end goal as an organization is trying to remove suppressors from the National Firearms Act. Mm-hmm. In 2015, we worked with Representative Matt Salmon. It was us, our attorney at the time, and the NRA with Representative Salmon's staff. We spent about 6 months drafting the initial draft of the Hearing Protection Act. That got introduced by him in October of 2015. And at the time, we figured, hey, it's going to be a while before Republicans take the White House, before they have both chambers in Congress. This is really an educational messaging bill that we're going to spend the next, 4 to 6 to 8 or however long it takes years educating members and normalizing suppressors. Fast forward a little over a year after we introduced it, Trump wins the White House and is sworn in January of 2017. And, we're just sitting there like, this is the opportunity came faster than we ever thought.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to stop. We're going to push as hard as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
So we did. We got it reintroduced. Representative Sam retired. Representative Jeff Duncan, who was the Republican co-chair for the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus, which is the largest bipartisan caucus on the Hill.
Mm-hmm.
They have, several hundred members comprised of from both sides of the aisle in both chambers, in the House and the Senate. He introduced that bill in the House. Senator Crapo introduced it in the Senate, and we blitzed, man. I was in D.C. almost, if not every week, every other week, meeting with members, signing up co-sponsors. We had, I think at our peak, somewhere around 150, 160 co-sponsors. So those are locked-in votes. We don't even have to do a whip count on those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up getting it amended into the Sportsman's Act, or the SHARE Act, which was the big sportsman's omnibus package that had a whole lot of firearms provisions and pro-hunting, pro-outdoor provisions that was spearheaded by the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus. We got it thrown into that. And I don't know if y'all remember, I was actually getting into my Uber on the way to the first committee hearing, the Federal Land Subcommittee in D.C. for that bill in June of, 2017 or 2018? Years are kind of running together at this
Mm-hmm.
point.
Yeah.
That June, when we heard the news about the congressional baseball shooting.
Yeah.
And our member, Representative Duncan, our lead sponsor for that bill, the shooter actually asked him and our friend who was his assistant who was driving him to the baseball practice, like, hey, is this practice for Republicans or Democrats? He said, it's the Republican practice, not thinking anything of it.
Mm-hmm.
Dude walks in, 30 seconds later, starts opening fire. So obviously that delayed that hearing.
Mm-hmm.
It got funded until September. We get back in September. They actually hold the hearing on a Tuesday. We're there. Unfortunately, we didn't make the cut to testify, although we tried pretty hard. And I will guarantee you that if that bill comes up for consideration again, I will be on the panel for that. But we got it passed out of the subcommittee. 2 days later, on that Thursday, it passed out of the full committee, which means they sent it to the House floor. And in talks with the Speaker's office, Speaker Ryan at the time, we were being told Tuesday to Thursday of the following week, we're going to have a full House floor vote. So we were using that time to try and whip the votes, shore up any sort of squishy Republicans, and see if we could get some more Democrats to come on, because it was a bipartisan bill. We had a few Democrats that had signed on. So we were doing our work, keeping our heads down. I went back for the weekend, was planning on coming back up on that Monday. And that Sunday in between when it passed out of committee and when it was scheduled sometime that next week, that Sunday in between was the shooting in Las Vegas.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And, as soon as it happened, for us, it's like, okay, well, we're at least going to delay that vote. There's just no political way in which that's going to occur, this week.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out that tweet, imagine how much worse it would have been with the silencer. Mm-hmm. And we're just, they're like, that's kind of the educational gap where people hear that and they buy the bullshit, hook, line, and sinker, right? We all know that it would make no difference if that dude had a suppressor. Honestly, it probably would have jammed his guns, right? Like maybe people would have survived, but at the distance that the people that were being shot at were,
we're not going to really know much of anything about that whole situation, man. That's all. Like, we don't know if that guy truly had bump stocks. We don't know anything that happened there. We won't see the real footage. We won't see anything out of that. Even like the FBI closed the case on that thing.
Yeah.
So,
to the public.
Huh?
Yeah, with no communication to the public whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a place like Vegas where there's a lot of cameras, I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. So this is really interesting. I didn't know that, Knox, you were like on the inside, right? Most of us were on the outside of this situation. Richard, you could bring up your memory. I'm just going to give mine really quick, right? So I remember hearing about the Hearing Protection Act. Okay, first of all, let's go back a little bit. I remember the suppressors, since I got into this thing, I got into this to doing what I'm doing now like 7 years ago. And I think suppressors were becoming more and more popular, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of companies are getting on board with making suppressors. The companies were looking at integral suppressors and on all levels, calibers, things like that. People were doing this ink canal technology, all kinds of stuff was happening. And, to me, I thought it was a good thing. There was a good thing going. Everyone was buying them. Lots of good stuff going on. The Hearing Protection Act came around. Everyone started talking about that. And something crazy kind of happened, right? That people, it seems like to me, went from buying suppressors to like, oh no, because you have to buy it. Then you obviously you pay for it. I'm going to say they're kind of, you could put it in the expensive category. Then you have to pay for your tax stamp, fill out forms, wait about 6 months. I think suppressors were so popular at that time. Some people were waiting like a year. There was all kinds of things going on. And all of a sudden, it's like it fell off a cliff. Because everyone was like, guess what? Suppressors are going to be free or really cheap. We don't have to do anything. Yeah. I'm just going to wait because, Trump's going to get in there and everyone will have suppressors. I don't have to buy anything right now. Does that seem accurate to you guys, or do you all see that from a different point of view?
I can kind of speak to that. We were talking a little bit about some of the Form 4 applications and the numbers coming in. Mm-hmm. And so I think, there's kind of two sides to that story, or two kind of things to look at. So I've been tracking Form 4 applications. ATF has the data going all the way back to, I think, 93 Form 4 applications. But if you look at maybe, say, the last 10 years, so in 2011, there were 33,000, just shy of 34,000 applications, Form 4 applications. And that number has increased about 40% per year on average. Mm-hmm. What you see is that blip there again in 2016, like we talked about, those 276,000 applications that came into ATF after they announced the implementation of 41F. And then once it was implemented, so this was, I guess to marry up the timeline. So the Hearing Protection Act was introduced in October of 15. That year, there were 130,000 applications. So the year after it was introduced, 2016, that first half of the year, still 276,000 applications coming in. So definitely not a decrease in sale, but a huge increase in sales, even while the Hearing Protection Act is there. Now, again, this is pre-Trump being elected too. Mm-hmm. So Obama's still in the White House. Mm-hmm. From the time that the ATF 41F gets implemented, then it drops off a cliff. I mean, it precipitously, 90% of the applications came in that first half of the year, only 10% in the second half. Mm-hmm. But then 2017, so this is after Trump's elected, he's inaugurated into office, the Hearing Protection Act is still, happening. It's been introduced again. There were 110,000 applications. So again, about a 15% decrease over 2015, kind of your last normal year. Mm-hmm. So not the huge drop off that I think was perceived. But what did happen there also was post 41F, manufacturers were still continuing to produce. So ATF also includes some of the manufacturing data in their report, and we submit FOIA requests pretty much every year to ask ATF, how many suppressors are there in the registry? How many have been made each year?
They don't know.
They kind of know. They can look at the Form 2 data. The funny thing is they can't tell. They can't tell historically. They can't go back in time and say, hey, on this date, this is how many were in the registry. They can only tell us on this date when we looked, this is how many there were, but we can't go back in time. But the interesting thing, so in 2016, again, they received a total of 312,000 Form 4s the whole year, 2016. But they showed an increase in the registry of about 452,000. So essentially, they had 150,000 more suppressors made than Form 4s received, which is a pretty good barometer of sales, how many suppressors. And that 150,000 is really about a year's supply. And so what we saw was that the distribution channel in terms of distributors and dealers were chocked full of suppressors, and people were still buying them, but a lot of manufacturers and distributors weren't getting reorders because they were just kind of still flushing that channel of suppressors.
Yeah. There were a lot of things. Then, I'm trying to remember. There's like, so you had integrally suppressed pistol came out from Silencer Co. There's a bunch of things going out there. I have one of those, right?
Those are.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited about that. There were a lot of things going. You know what? It just feels to me like prior to the election, lots of people were getting behind Trump, getting behind Republicans. You know, everyone was excited. We're like, wow, you know, this could be the thing. Everyone does that push. Trump gets in there, right? Republicans have the House, Senate. They have everything, supermajority. And then nothing happens. So, yes, of course, you know, there's other things going on. There's shootings. News is affecting this or whatever. But it seems to me like a lot of the politicians that we were talking to when we were like, you know, take suppressors off the NFA, you know, where's the universal CCW, right? Like a national CCW for everyone. Where's all this stuff? They kept saying, oh, don't worry about it. Just wait till the midterms. I remember getting that language from a lot of these guys. Oh, wait till the midterms. The weird thing is everything really flipped by the midterms. But somewhere in there, the thing I just really remember this going into stores, like suppressors were really popular. Everyone was trying to get on board with that. You know, then all of a sudden, everyone I'm talking to is like, these things are going to be real cheap. Because they're coming off the NFA, you know, which I remember having conversations with companies about that. Like, really, are they going to become super cheap all of a sudden when all of this happens?
Nope.
I don't think that the technology it takes to make it, people are like, oh, you could use anything. A potato could be a suppressor now. You know, I could just do this. This is going to be, the competition's going to change the whole game. And it almost seems like people stop doing it. But you're saying that that's not true? That's not accurate?
No, if you look at the Form 4s coming into ATF, the numbers were relatively normal and steady. 2018, we're back up to like 165,000. 2019, almost 200,000 Form 4s. And it looks like this year.
So why did so many companies get out of the game? I saw there was a bunch of companies that were going to put out integral barrels and things like that. Or a lot of guys coming on board. Big companies buying into other suppressor manufacturers. Some of that happened with Gemtech.
You know, I think there was a ton of optimism. There was a ton of optimism that HPA was going to happen. There was a ton of optimism that concealed carry reciprocity was going to happen. There was a ton of optimism that you know, we were going to see the passage of a lot of pro-gun legislation, and you know, based on events and things that occurred that were out of our control, like some of these high-profile shootings, you know, they just didn't. They fizzled out. But in terms of suppressors, integrals, we did see a bunch of new integrals coming about, and that was kind of a nod towards what would happen if HPA occurred. Of course, I think what people maybe lost sight of too was that HPA didn't, you know, we heard a lot of people say, well, it's going to totally deregulate suppressors. And it's like, well, it's not. It's going to switch them from being an NFA item to being just essentially a firearm. Firearm. So they're going to have a serial number. You know, we'd hear people, oh, they're going to be cheap and disposable.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's still a serial number. You don't take a worn out Ruger 1022 and throw it in the trash.
So there wasn't. So maybe people just didn't understand what was going to happen. I see that Knox looks like he wants to jump in.
Yeah, I think there's two things as well to point out with kind of the folks that, you know, said, hey, well, I'm going to wait for the HPA to pass because things are going to be different. By and large, the people that had already bought suppressors, like our current market, had bought everything that they wanted in that 6-month period between the announcement of 41F and its implementation in early 2016. I think that everyone else that kind of jumped on I'm just waiting for the HSBA to pass bandwagon, specifically after the election, remember, had never bought a suppressor, right? Like they're the same people that they say, oh, well, it takes too long, or I don't want to pay a $200. I don't want the ATF to be able to come to my house, which, by the way, they can't. They're always going to have some form of an excuse, and that was the kind of excuse du jour, so to speak, that was easy to parrot. And frankly, like, honestly, dealers, you kind of got to put some of it on them as well, right? Like, these guys were used to not having to sell suppressors because they sold themselves. All of a sudden, you have to shift, and you're telling customers to wait. Like, I mean, I just don't see the thought process in that sales strategy. I get the optimism with the Hearing Protection Act. Look, we were as optimistic as anybody. We do get false attribution. People saying,
I'm not, by the way, I'm not trying to knock you guys. I think that would have been so awesome. Like we were just saying, we all deserve that. You know, it would have been great to make that happen. But so obviously there's what mechanically happened with all of these bills, right? And with the politicians, which is not on you guys, right? You're on the other side of that equation. You can't control what these politicians what they do necessarily. We can put pressure and try to convince them and nudge them in a direction. Ultimately, they do what they want to. It's just this weird, like I remember, I don't know, Rich, do you remember this? I remember going to stores and they didn't have problems selling suppressors one day, and then all of a sudden they had problems. People weren't buying anything.
Oh yeah.
I saw like a 223 suppressor go down to $99. I bought one. I'm not saying it's the most awesome thing.
Was it 41P when that was going on that just decimated the suppressor industry? I think it was 41P when that was, getting ready to pass.
After its implementation.
Was it after the implementation?
Yeah.
Because I remember people, should I buy one? It's like, if you want one, buy one.
Yeah, and I think that's what Owen was saying, right? That's what you were saying, Owen.
Leading up to 41F being implemented, that 6-month period when they announced it to when it was implemented. I mean, you couldn't, if it wasn't nailed down.
It was gone.
So did we get like a perfect storm on that? Did we get a perfect storm that you had that this didn't go through? Because it just seems like something really crazy happened there, and I'm not saying you guys. I know when I was talking to people, what they were telling me was ridiculous, and I'm like, dude, I kind of do this for a living, and I'm talking to these companies, Yeah,
there were certainly people in there that were kind of, playing the odds of like, well, okay, it takes 9 months to get a Form 4 approved. Especially right after the election. I mean, people are like, oh man, if this thing passes, quickly, like why, I'll wait, it's like, I could wait 3 months or I could wait 9 months. And, there were people playing those odds, but man, if they had just put the Form 4 in, they'd have had their suppressor, long before, obviously. So, but like to Knox's point, I bought my first suppressor before I was even in the industry. I bought my first suppressor in about 2000 or 2001 time frame. 14 months was just the normal. That's what it took. And, back then there were only 10,000 Form 4s going in every year. I mean, not very many at all. And it still took 14 months. And I've seen that roller coaster that, as transfer times drop down, more people like, 6 months isn't so bad to wait, and then they start buying, and so people start buying, and then the transfer times start creeping up because ATF's getting more and more and more and more forms, and then pretty soon back up to 9 or 10 months even after they've added a bunch of examiners, and then sales taper off. People are like, 10 months, 11 months, 12 months, 14 months, that's too long to wait. And then they ATF starts to catch up a little bit, and it's just this constant seesaw, because all they can do is throw people at it. We had that beautiful glorious e-form system for Form 4s for a few months. And
you had to bring that up, didn't you?
I know. I'm sorry. I had to poke that
we're not open on Wednesdays. Wednesdays? What the hell is that?
It's a special day for the government.
and
Yeah.
available. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember in it was probably like '07 or '08 when they moved NFA branch out of headquarters in DC over to now in West Virginia. I've got friends that got Form 4s approved in like 30 days, mailbox to mailbox, because they had these great examiners that were pushing through forms and getting them done. And then, again, people found out about it, like, 30 days, that's nothing. And submit Form 4s, and then they started getting backlogged. So, I think the transfer, it's all a perfect storm. The transfer times, the paperwork, just so many things affect it.
If you look at so let's jump ahead a little bit in this conversation. If you looked at what happened, so Trump becomes president, lots of companies in the firearms industry had what I call the Hillary plan for selling guns. Right? They were thinking Hillary was going to get elected. They would sell every single gun they ever made. That didn't necessarily happen. And lots of them made lots of ARs. So that didn't necessarily happen. So you had a little bit of a slowdown. And there were not every company, but lots of companies that weren't prepared for that. They bought extra machines. They hired people, built buildings, all kinds of stuff. And they were making things that people weren't buying. We had this kind of slowdown. And then within a couple of years, now we're at the top, right? We've broken new highs all of a sudden. I guess it's a combination of those companies eventually caught up, stopped, maybe got rid of a lot of stock, started building more wisely. Then you got into the COVID thing. There's just a whole bunch of other things that happened. You started getting these riots and everything, stuff that's going on in the news, defund the police. All of that is just making more and more people buy things. Now we're here in this weird situation. It is kind of this crazy thing that you cannot predict.
Yeah, I'd say that for as small as the suppressor industry is, and it's in terms of the larger gun industry, suppressors is a niche. It's a pretty small portion of that, but it tracks pretty closely with what goes on in the bigger gun community. 2016 leading up to the election. I mean, really leading right up to the election day. You had companies breaking sales records. They were selling every high capacity magazine and AR that was available. And suppressors in 2016 were way up too. And then 2017 came, and in the industry we call it the Trump slump. That you couldn't hardly give away some guns. I mean, AR-15s, you could pick them up for a song.
What are we talking? Like what's the cheapest I saw? 300.
Yeah, like $300-400.
Yeah.
You could get an AR, maybe not the highest quality one, but you could get an AR for $300-400.
You could get a decent one.
Yeah.
Compared to like 10 years ago.
The other problem with the suppressor industry is
you had companies that went out of business.
The other problem with the suppressor industry is when things are good, all these yahoos decide, I'm going to build suppressors. And they can't tell their ass from a hole in the ground. I've got 5 suppressors here that have come in that people just don't want. They've left them here. I don't want it. You keep it. And they're all from companies who, in the last 5 years, have come into business, and they're the biggest thing in the world.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like new people jumping on the bandwagon of making.
And they're a piece of crap. There's no way I would let that go out of my shop. One of them is a 9mm suppressor for an Uzi. I cannot shoot a 22 long rifle out of it without getting baffle strikes. I mean, it's just horrendous. And this was one of the companies it was one of the new companies that never last. It wasn't Gemtech or Advanced Armament. It was one of these doofuses who had a lot of money and said, we're going to build suppressors. So all those guys flood the market with crap.
Yes. Don't tell us what you really feel.
Yeah. And then, the market takes a downturn, and they've not planned, they've not done anything. and they all go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, there were a lot of companies that saw that run up to 41F were just, if you could build it, it would sell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There were a lot of companies that saw that and thought that was somehow the new normal. And that was a definite bubble. It had a very definite date that bubble popped. And that was the day that ATF 41F went into effect. And so, we saw that next year that was compounded. Not only had those sales gone back to kind of a normal level, but then there were so many suppressors in that distribution pipeline those manufacturers that got into the game in 2016 thinking that was the normal really realized that it wasn't the case in 2017.
That's how we get bubbles. That's how we get bubbles in all industries across the board.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so different. You've got speculative investors who jump in and they see a short-term downturn, they're out. You've got other folks that come in and want to maintain their position in the long term. It's tough and during peak, right? Like you can ride it out, and if you rode it out by now, the marketplace is we're gonna hit new highs, and we're still maintaining with that one blip an upward trajectory, and we anticipate that next year is going to beat this year. And we'll be more than likely, barring extenuating political circumstances, the best year that we've ever had.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those numbers. I think that's the reason why Owen originally reached out to me. I was talking to Dave from Liberty Suppressors. I did something for AmmoLand, and Dave was saying that that he's seen at that time. He said he's seen a slump, right? Maybe like 20% less than usual. I think I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, and then Owen, you reached out to me and you said that you guys are seeing the numbers a little differently. So do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, and I can't speak to what Dave's seeing, on his side of the industry or in his specific business, but again, the numbers that we see from they're public. They publish them every year. They're showing if you trend across that 10-year period, there's nearly 40% per year increase in the number of Form 4s that they receive. And the weird thing is if you extract out 2016 and 2017, that kind of big jump and then that dip. Whether you include those or exclude those, it pretty much stays the same. It's something like 39.9% versus like 40.1% growth average per year.
You're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if maybe someone's jumping on your internet there.
That could be. Yeah, I've got a spotty connection.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, you got a little bit better. Tell anyone in the house, get off the internet.
Damn kids.
Right?
Yeah, someone's downloading something. Do you want to repeat that?
Yeah, I'll just what we're seeing annually is about a 40% growth rate.
40%. Okay.
Yeah, ATF public data that they publish annually in their Firearms Commerce Report. The number of Form 4s they're receiving, which again is usually a pretty good barometer of how many, there's one Form 4 for every can sold. That's showing about 40% year over year.
Okay, so I think I know I spoke to him recently, and he tells me he's seeing an uptick. There may be a difference here, like you said, from company to company. I think he was talking about his company. There's different companies. They have different people that they market to. Can you tell us who's buying most of those suppressors? Are we talking like government contracts, civilians? What are we looking at here? Are government things even tracked?
No, they're not tracked in the Form 4s.
Yeah, they would be. We'd see those maybe on a Form 5. So if a manufacturer is producing suppressors specifically for a federal, like U.S. government contract, they don't have to put them in SDR. They can go straight to the government. Many companies do because selling out of stock. So if they're building for stock or speculatively, then they're
Yeah.
going to put those in the RTR and then sell them on a Form 5.
Okay, how are those serialized? Are those serialized similar to civilian ones or not? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be serialized the same way, but the difference is, a Form 4, you can only put one firearm on that. So one Form 4 equals one silencer transfer.
Right.
In the case of like Form 3s and 5s, those you can have 100 suppressors, 1,000 suppressors. So one Form 5 that we see in the ATF's annual data may represent a contract for.
Okay, so
thousands.
if the FDA's tactical unit, if they're getting like 1,000 suppressors for some crazy reason, then they can put it all on one form. That's what you're saying, right? Because this is the weird thing. We're living, all of these government departments now have tactical units, and they're getting. I remember at SHOT Show talking to a guy who was on a tactical unit for the post office. And I think they buy cans. I know he was telling me they can't have full auto. I was like, oh, poor you.
There's that. I know, like Amtrak, the railway police have, a tactical unit.
And there is. Go ahead.
The post office has been shooting up places for years.
Well, you know what? There is some I don't know if they should have all these tactical units, but I think there are some practical uses, right, for them having the suppressors the same practical units, reasons why we have it.
Yeah, exactly. My father-in-law retired law enforcement. He was retired on disability due to hearing loss, and that's years of, both being on the range and shooting guns, but also, loud radios in cars and sirens with the windows down and things like that.
Yeah.
And actually when I was at Gemtech, his old department where he was the chief, I know officers, they got some grant money and said, hey, we've paid out disability claims for hearing loss, and we need to get some suppressors so we can protect hearing. So they're not tools just for tactical teams and spooky stuff. They're just a useful means of protecting hearing and reducing liability.
Yeah. I think someone, I don't know if Knox wanted to jump in, or Rich, if you wanted to jump in on something.
Well, I mean, if you want to get suppressors legalized across the board, you go talk to OSHA and say, you need this for hearing protection. Yeah, tomorrow, if you have a gun, it's got to have a suppressor on it.
Yeah, we've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
We've been with the medical community for years trying to get them to on suppressors. And this past fall, actually, we finally got one of them to put pen to paper. The National Conservation Association came out with a letter addressed to us that not only supported the Hearing Protection Act, but suppressors as a tool to mitigate hearing damage.
That's good.
CDC and NIOSH have put out studies, in the past that have, kind of had suppressors as a bit of an ancillary. Hey, like in order to reduce noise exposure at a shooting range, for students and instructors, you should use suppressors for their legal and that kind of stuff. But the NHCA was really the first to stick their neck out and say explicitly, unequivocally, we need to push legislation to deregulate suppressors so that more people can have access to them. And we've been, honest to God, that took 5 years. And we've been working with other organizations like the American Academy of Audiology, who, in my opinion, they're derelict in their duty, right? They're allowing politics and their anti-gun personal politics to affect their core mission of trying to mitigate hearing damage and protect people's hearing. And it goes, the same for the AMA, the American Medical Academy, and all these other organizations that refuse to take a stand.
Yeah.
But it just shows their true nature, in our opinion.
This is not so. If you're like an anti-gun person or something, looking at this, anti-suppressor or whatever, and you're looking at this and you just think we're just saying this as like some kind of Trojan thing, no, this is an actual thing. This is a health. This is a health issue here.
Real live thing.
Yeah, this is an absolute thing with many sides, many reasons why these are good things. I think that there's a lot of people. So I remember one time we had this big gamer on, and he seemed like he was reasonably pro-gun, right? He bought guns and everything. But when we got on the subject of suppressors, he was like, no, suppressors are just really for assassins. Only people who buy those things want to kill people. No, that's not, maybe you see that in a movie, and what's happening is that these people are being moved by movies. It would be similar to if Trump was looking at a movie and the movie said there's no such thing as global warming, and then the other side of that argument says, look at this crazy guy. He's looking at movies and using that as his basis here. It's the same thing when they say that. What you see in movies is not the reality. You're seeing someone shooting like I don't know, an AR-15 or something, and it sounds super quiet. I've never seen that.
Yeah.
Or heard that.
One thing I like to bring up when we're meeting with folks in the media, doing demonstrations, or talking with legislators, and they bring up the assassin stuff all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, have you ever shot with a suppressor before? Generally, the answer is no. Mm-hmm. And say, okay. So where have you been exposed to them? It's through Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And my retort is, okay, well, have you seen Jurassic Park? Most people have seen Jurassic Park. Okay, well, does that make you a paleontologist? Does that make you an expert? Right? Mm-hmm. Obviously. Okay, well, so how do you expect to develop an informed position politically or in any regard on something that you've never actually been exposed to? Mm-hmm. And suppressors are absolutely a victim of Hollywood's this kind of myth that they've built around it. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to Hiram Percy Maxim and his original marketing. So it became kind of an easy fictional way to portray them. But the sound effects that you hear in the movies are as real as the dinosaurs that you see in Jurassic Park. Mm-hmm. It's pure, unadulterated fiction.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the wall that we have to break through.
Mm-hmm. I think the sound is, sound is very important to us as human beings, right? Our sense of hearing. And there's lots of things around us that make a lot of noise. And, I don't know, maybe some of these guys would say, well, there shouldn't be guns. Well, that's not going to happen. And we're not going for that. And people should train. They should be aware of how to use these firearms that they have so they could be safer and all that kind of stuff. And while they're you don't want to just buy, you could do it. I'm not saying you can't do it. You could do whatever you want to do. But, you should do this. And in the process of doing it, you shouldn't lose your hearing behind that, right? Absolutely. This is one of the most precious things to us as human beings. And you shouldn't lose it. So this is why it's so important. And trying to block it because of what these folks think here. They don't know. I hear the thing that, you could go somewhere with an AR or something like that. Or they say an assault rifle. And just, shoot this thing with a suppressor and no one's going to know what's happening.
Yep. Yeah. We heard that pretty effectively, I thought, debunked it. It's just, it becomes willful ignorance for people. Mm-hmm. Right? They don't want to hear what you're saying. They don't want to listen to the scientific arguments. But I don't know if for the Virginia Beach shooting, there was reports around people saying, it sounded like a nail gun. So we reached out to some of our scientific friends who have databases compiled of peak impulse noises that are actually scientifically captured. So these folks work for CDC and NIOSH, OSHA, and all these other organizations. So this is good data. This isn't just an amateur with a boom mic saying, I'm going to record the peak sound level. These are actual, doctors who are doing this for a living. We said, hey, what's the peak noise, the sound pressure level for a nail gun? It's about 100 decibels. That's kind of about the upper end form. So we said, okay, let's compare that to the quietest, AR that you can get, about 130 decibels. So the difference between 100 to 130 decibels doesn't sound like a ton. 30 decibels, so about 30% increase, right? No, these are not linear numbers, right? They are logarithmic. So it works in much the same way as, say, like the Richter scale, where a slight increase translates to a massive
with sound for sure. Yes. Yeah.
So you look at that difference. It's not just a third louder. It is 1,000 times.
Yeah, you guys can hear that. I know that. That thing does not have a suppressor on it. Okay, I live in Florida. People take those off. They literally jack up their cars and cut those things off. You just heard it. And that's a car. That's a car.
These things are still incredibly loud. And say that like quiet as a nail gun. Like, no, it is immensely louder than that. Even at their quietest.
Yeah, and even how many incidents have we had like that? James Miller says, how many murders are committed by assassins? Please.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
let's think
yeah.
about it. And I'll tell you guys something that people always tell me: nothing is quieter than a knife.
Yeah.
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 Well, whenever I get people telling me, "Oh, well, only assassins use suppressors," I always tell them, "Well, why in the hell would an assassin use a suppressor?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take them out in the backyard with my Ruger 2245, put my 22 can on it, pop around. That's how loud a suppressed 22 is. Take the can off, ball up a towel, stick the muzzle in a towel, shoot it. You could barely hear the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Why the hell would they use a suppressor
Mm-hmm.
when you can use a towel and it's much quieter?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different things. I think it's just I don't know what the word for it is. You guys can tell me. I'm gonna say it's misplaced reality.
Yeah.
Misplaced reality on that. I know when we had that gamer come on and he was talking about it, we had a conversation with him about that. I hope it changed his mind, because overall, if he's someone who seemed to enjoy shooting. If you enjoy shooting, and you go places, and this is like the best way to do it. Some people don't have a choice but to shoot indoors, and that's really bad.
Yeah.
It
doesn't really make it louder, but you're being exposed to the concussive effect more times because it's bouncing off the walls more.
Yeah.
Your modern shooting ranges have sound technology, the way that they build the roof baffles in, that they put up on the sidewalls, but there's only so much that you can do, because that will ultimately collect lead and dust and unspent gunpowder, which creates a massive fire hazard.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
One of those goes up.
Yeah. So when we mentioned assassins here, lots of people talking about Hillary. Flying Rich says, "You mean how busy is Hillary Clinton?"
He uses a revolver.
Yeah, Michael Avon says, "Murders by assassins, ask Hillary." So okay, so can we with the time that we have here, can we try to look at the future of what's going on here? I don't know if you guys spend any time looking at that. Obviously, we're going through this COVID thing. Maybe there's not as much activism going on, or are you guys still really active, even though you can't actually go places?
Yeah, we're doing as much as we can, like everyone else, from quarantine essentially. But we're still communicating on a regular basis with members, with our legislative contacts. A lot of right now, a lot of time spent just planning and organizing, and being ready for when things open back up. Conversations with ATF talking about, how can we get, an actual functional e-form system working. We've heard many optimistic timelines of when that might be, and we've kind of stopped communicating those beyond because they've missed most of them. So, but we do have, good relationships with contacts at ATF, and there's been some movement there, and people.
Do you think they're really interested in that? I mean, the ATF is notoriously understaffed, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, the guys in the organization might not want to find a reason to streamline this, especially if they would maybe rather see more people get hired, or, I think it's a good thing to streamline it, but they may not really believe that's a good thing.
I can't speak to that in terms of the internal politics or conversations they have there. We can only kind of say what they've told us, and they're working on it. They're supposedly, and we're hopeful. That's one of the things we're pushing for, because I think we talked about that roller coaster of forms as transfer times go up and down, and how that affects.
Yeah.
And in the current system, the only thing they can do to address that is to throw more people at it. And people cost money. People take time to train. They're even discovering that they're coming to a point of diminishing returns that, as crazy as this sounds, but as you add more people and they continue to expand that office, then every piece of paper that has to move from one desk to another now eventually has to travel further. And I mean, we're talking a matter of feet, but you take anything in terms of time, something that takes 10 seconds or a minute longer, or has to move 10 feet further. Anyone that's been in high volume manufacturing facility knows all about those time cycles. They physically have to move paper further and now multiply that by 300,000 Form 4 applications they're going to receive. A question we often get or people often ask in exasperation is, well, why does it take so long to approve a Form 4? It shouldn't take any time at all. And they're right. It doesn't take that long to process a Form 4 in terms of completing the background check and marking it approved and stamping it signed and affixing the stamp. But it's the problem is that there's 150,000 forms in front of yours that they've got to get through before yours gets approved, and that's the frustrating part.
And the system's weird. Like checks go one place and the form goes another place.
Yeah, so to give a little background on that, so checks used to go to Atlanta, and then they went up to West Virginia. Now they go to Portland, and what that is ATF, of course, uses a contractor to process payments. So right now it's U.S. Bank. It used to be Bank of America. So now they go to Portland, Oregon. So even that, it doesn't seem like a lot, but you're say Knox there in Atlanta, he used to mail it and it'd be there same day or next day. Now he's got to mail it all the way to Portland, Oregon, who then, they've got a contractor that opens the envelope and processes the check or credit card payment. Then they put them in they batch them and mail them all the way to West Virginia. And so even that, if moving to an electronic system where the payments are processed electronically and the data entry is already done and all those things would create huge efficiencies that would start down on that transfer.
Yeah, I've seen them mix up people's credit cards and things like that.
Oh yeah,
and checks and all that stuff. Yeah.
It's not intentional. It's just every human involved in that process, there's a potential for mistakes there. I would in defense of the folks, Knox and I have met the legal instrument examiners, the folks at NFA that process those forms, and they're hardworking people. They do a great job. And they're working as hard as they can. Imagine in their shoes for a minute that you come into your desk every day and that stack of paper never gets any smaller, no matter how hard you work.
Yeah, I've got a trick that can help.
Right?
Abolished ATF.
Yeah, that would be
They'll be on a permanent vacation.
Don't have government workers do it.
No, I know. I understand where you're coming from. Go ahead. Looks like Knox wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, the abolish the ATF stuff is something that we obviously hear a lot of.
Right. I know you guys have to deal with these guys, so you're,
we know
fine lines.
Deal with. It becomes one of those things that, like, yes, we would all love to see something like that happen. The problem would be.
And then we lost Knox. How did that happen?
And then we lost him.
I think I know where he's going with this.
In all likelihood.
The problem there is that whether you abolish is what's that?
Yeah, I think we got him back. We lost you for a second, Knox.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so say let's like jump down this rabbit hole. If we do abolish the ATF, it will go to the F, and quite frankly, would be worse. In fact, ATF gets, poo-pooed on quite a bit for the long wait times, when in reality, the FBI is one of the larger culprits because they run the NICS checks. And at the end of the day, the background check for an NFA item is just a NICS check. There's no super secret, background check. They have your fingerprints and passport photos because that's what they had back in the day before they had a computerized system. But they're superfluous to the process at this point. FBI has the mandate to process Form or Title I NICS checks within that 3 business day time frame. Otherwise, the transfer can proceed. Technically, the transfer could proceed if ATF were to approve them without a NICS approval. Nonetheless, FBI knows that ATF is never going to do that in a million years. So if they receive a form and say there's been an influx of Title I forms and they don't want to process NFA applications that day, they don't. If you get delayed, so 3 things can happen when you submit a NICS check. You either get auto proceed, auto deny, or delay. And the delay, as Owen alluded to earlier, could be as simple as, if there's another Knox Williams who might have a glitch on their record, and it pings that. Normally, when it gets, that becomes a delay, right? So they're saying, we don't know about this person. We need to kick it down to the next guy. And generally, it seems instantaneous. You know, you can generally resolve most of those problems within a minute or two.
Mm-hmm.
They instead put it in a pile off to the side, said, well, this got delayed. We'll get to it when we get to it. And that could be months later. So therein lies the rub. But like ATF actually almost was abolished, could have been abolished under the Bush administration. But they kind of realized, like, okay, well, if we abolish them, then we're just shifting the problem. It's not going to actually solve anything.
Mm-hmm.
For us, from our perspective, the biggest thing that they need to do is take a step out of the first half of the 20th century, right? I mean, like, the fax machine is one of their most utilized pieces of technology. I can't even fax. I don't even know how to fax it.
In fact, when they
go to March,
when they set up an email to receive NFA applications at ATF, the actual email includes the word fax in the email address, if you can believe that. Like,
wow.
You made an email address with the word fax in it.
Yeah. So let me see if you guys don't have anything. Let me get to a question. Len Holt says, question on the trust versus individual. Is the trust easier to place in the last will and testament? I think we spoke about that a little bit, but
lawyer.
Essentially, that's the answer.
Lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer. I can't give legal advice. There's my disclaimer.
Yeah.
And so much of it can be very state specific, differently in different states in many cases. So that really is a question for an attorney that really isn't an expert on state matters. That hopefully has some firearm and NFA knowledge as well. But that's a good question.
Yeah. Let's see. There's a couple of different things. But let me jump to this. So let's go back to getting suppressors off the NFA, right? If we can get all the circumstances right, most of which are probably not in you guys' hands. I think it's in the people. People need to vote or whatever. Then the politicians that you vote for need to keep their promises. We can get crazy with that, right? But let's say we could wave a wand and get that. What does America look like in that? Because everyone had their own ideas of what it looked like. I've got you guys on. I think it'd be great to get you to tell me what that would really look like.
I mean, what would it sound?
Yeah, look, what would it look like for us as gun guys, as owners? Yeah, what would it sound like? I get it. Right, go ahead.
I think to maybe this is a good spot to dispel a few myths that we really heard a lot during the the hype about HPA. People thought it was past. One is that they become instantly cheap and available. Imagine taking some. We have a manufacturing base that has the capability of producing probably 300,000 to 500,000 suppressors a year. That's really what the current kind of consumer demand is, and that's manufacturing and supply and demand sort of equalizes. So now you take something and completely deregulate it, or not deregulate it, but move it into a Title I firearm space where all you do is go down to your local and do a NICS check.
Yeah, so and that's something we should probably define a little bit, because I don't think everyone, that's one of the things that I thought when you were saying it earlier. People don't realize that you weren't saying, hey, you could just go in, to Walmart, get a pack of bubble gum and get a suppressor at the same time. That whole thing was, you were still going to have to do a background check, right?
Yeah,
still a background check,
4473.
Yeah.
And
the whole thing.
Well, right? Like, there is a bill out there called the Shush Act that would completely, as hard and heavy of a lift as the Hearing Protection Act is and will be, and we hear a lot of people tell us it'll never happen. I personally don't believe that. I think that we will get it. I do not see a universe in which we will ever get suppressors to the point where they're treated like a scope and transferred without at least a NICS check. That's something I would love to see. I don't.
But realistically, we're talking about realism, right?
We're not something we don't think can actually get pushed across the finish line.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I think it is feasible to get the Hearing Protection Act for sure. You just have to have a bunch of things line up, and then also, you were talking about these incidents that happened. We have to realize I'm not happy that those things happen, but we just the same things keep happening, and we just keep thinking the same solution that we have is going to fix that, which is throw more laws on top of it, and that's not happening. So we need to people in America need to come to this point where they understand that that's not going to happen. People need to be able to defend themselves. We have the Second Amendment. There's all these things going on, and hey, you need to allow people to have easier access, I think, to suppressors for what we were talking about, their health, right? Their hearing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to go back to what you were saying, Owen, if we get there, you're saying that right now the production capacity is about what, 300,000 to 500,000 cans?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's pretty realistic, and so it's going to take time for new manufacturers to come online. Companies that maybe weren't in the suppressor space to design something and get into that market. So there's going to be at least an initial gap where demand far outstrips supply, and anytime that happens, naturally prices tend to go up too. So I think initially there will be a severe shortage of suppressors, at least in the short term, probably a year to 18 months, and while people catch up, after that, costs could come down just by economy of scale. Manufacturing, being able to say, instead of manufacturing 10,000, you make 100,000 of something, your costs are going to go down, so you will be able to offer some of that in reduction in.
But for I think one, like we were saying, there's still going to be regulation. So if you're going to get into the business of making it, the people getting into the business are going to have to jump through those hoops. They're going to have the manufacturing facilities. None of them want to get on the bad side of Richard and make horrible things. So you've got that,
and that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, because it's not something that's restrictive, so there'll be people getting in there. But you've got you still have the materials, right? It still takes certain machinery and everything to make these things. How low? I don't know what the average price of a suppressor is. That's kind of a weird question, because I guess that depends on what caliber we're talking and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah, but how much are we really going to save off of the price?
It's hard to say. I think the industry will probably fan out a bit. But right now it's pretty focused that there's a low end and a high end that's kind of this far apart, whether it's 22 or titanium 338 can. It's kind of in this range. And I think that range will expand some, just like the normal firearm industry. You've got $500 1911s, you got $3,000 1911s, you got $200 pocket pistols, you've got $5,000 pistols, and so there will be a broader range of suppressors. And I think consumers and the market will, sort of decide, what's more, do they want value or do they want high quality or both? So you'll see some cheaper suppressors, but there's only so cheap you can get, and the quality still better be there. Now that you don't have, if you don't have a $200 tax tied to it and a long waiting period, people may be more inclined to try a cheaper brand and see if it's, good enough. Now, right now, because of that long transfer time and that $200 tax, people tend to spend more and spend for high quality because they're married to the thing.
Yeah. I mean, but also so if you're going to buy this is what I've seen. People might be buying, let's say, a $200 handgun, right? Let's say on the low end. I think you could probably get a handgun brand new, depending on where you get it from, for $150. Let's put it at $200. Okay, those people buy that. They do a background check. That's not disposable. No one looks at that as disposable. I think Knox wants to jump in on this.
Yeah, one thing that would be shaved right off the top would be that $200 tax stamp.
Yeah.
So I think that would
and
be
the wait time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would be huge.
Yeah.
I do have to disagree with Owen a little bit. I think if suppressors became a Title I item, one, you're going to have a bunch of idiots jump in. We're going to make 22 suppressors. and we're going to sell them for $99 or $75, and they're going to be a piece of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to flood the market with them. There's going to be 50 companies that do that. The big companies, are going to keep doing what they're doing. Prices will eventually come down on the quality stuff a little bit, not a whole lot. These small ones that are making junk, they're going to be within a year, 2 years, they're going to be out of business. Some other schmuck will be in. There's going to be a couple of companies like High Point. I mean, say all you want about High Point, but they go bang.
They make a gun that works. It's not pretty. It's not the prettiest gun.
Right.
Yeah.
There's going to be a couple of suppressor companies that follow the exact same model as High Point, and they're going to make a good living at it.
If they make a decent can and like the customer service stuff is there. Yeah.
And these are the guys that I'm talking that they're going to say, okay, we're going to make this thing cheap. Here's our price point. Mm-hmm. We're going to go after the low end.
Yeah.
But we want to make a decent suppressor.
Yeah. At the same time, you're always going to have the guys that maybe have a lot of suppressors already and want to climb up to that. We're always going to be looking for the next thing. We're always going to be looking for better sound suppression, lighter weight. We're just going to keep looking for better things.
I will always be able to sell one of my suppressors for $2,000 to $3,000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Custom built, handmade. It don't go out unless it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
People are still going to spend that.
Yeah.
The big companies, Silencer Co., Gemtech, Advanced Armament, their prices might drop maybe a quarter in the long run, but they're not going to plummet. People say, oh, you're going to be able to pick up a Gemtech suppressor for $39.95. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah. Good luck with that. I think it takes a little bit more than that to make a suppressor.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not as simple as everyone. Okay, yes, it's simple, right? We're talking about simple in terms of it's a tube.
Yeah, the designs are not that.
Yeah, it's got baffles, but there are other things that go into it, right? Exactly how are you producing that tube? How are you making those baffles? What adaptability goes in there? Yeah, you can if it's a basic thing and easy enough to make. I think you could get. I don't know if you can get it down to $50, but like I said, I spent $99 on a suppressor, but the market was falling apart.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At the time, and I think if we got something like that, like Owen is saying and Knox is saying, we're not going to see the market for that fall apart. Right now, there's so many people in America that do not want to get into suppressors. I think maybe it's Knox that said it earlier. People don't want to feel like the government could come to your house. You got to fill out this thing and do that thing. If we open this up, you're going to see, because I could tell you from when I make videos. So regular videos, gun stuff, people tend to look at that. I think that suppressor videos get, like a quarter of the audience, because automatically people look at it and like, oh, well, I'm never going to buy a suppressor.
Yeah.
So they don't think about that. I think we'll get into that zone where people are like, you know what? I'm all in now. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, how does that mesh, guys? This just came to my mind. How does that mesh with the states that don't allow it?
At this point, those states would still not allow us to suppressor.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be just like the ARs.
Yeah. We wrote a provision into the Hearing Protection Act that would ensure, because there is discrepancy in state law, like the way that they're drafted. Some of them are hyper specific in the way that they reference federal law. So we included a provision in there that would, do our best to ensure that there wouldn't be any overlapping issues that would essentially preempt them. So the 42 states that are legal to own would still remain legal to own regardless of what their state legislation says. Okay. And that's stuff we're proactively working on behind the scenes. It's not very sexy, but it's something that needs to be done, because that could be a logistical issue. A state that doesn't want to ban suppressors, if they're taken out of the NFA and that state law says, it has to be registered in compliance with the National Firearms Act, well, we're in a little bit of a disconnect. So those are the kind of things that, most of your consumers aren't going to think about, that, join us. This is what we think about. These are the problems that we're trying to preempt to make sure.
Okay, and then looks like you froze there. The guy with the clearest picture. Okay, there you go. I think we got him back. We lost the last part of what you said, Knox.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it just essentially, we're trying to preempt those problems and make sure that they never come.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Owen.
Well, just, being the numbers guy, I'll give you some more numbers just to think about. And that, at last, let's see, January of 2020, talking to ATF at SHOT Show, there was, they gave us a number, 1.8, just shy of 1.8 million suppressors in the registry. Okay. And so, I feel safe saying right now there's right about 2 million suppressors in the registry. Well, there's probably, a 500 million guns in private hands in America. I think, last year ATF was saying something like 400 million. I think we're well north of that at this point. Record sales. So,
yeah, the first quarter of this year we passed that, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, you figure suppressors are touching about a 0.25% of all the guns in America, 0.25% to maybe 0.5% of all the guns in America. So there's a lot of room for growth there, and same kind of, there's 100 and some million gun owners in America, and I think 5 million of them might be NRA members. Only 5%. ASA, we figure there's probably 500,000 suppressor owners if you take all the people on trusts and things like that. Got about 5,000 members. So, suppressors have a lot of room to grow. ASA has a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
We got a lot of people still to get into the fold of suppressor advocacy. So.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this question. This also just popped in my head. So obviously, like we talked about in the beginning, you guys have some big companies out there that are supporting you. Do you ever get like people saying, hey, you represent the big companies, not necessarily the smaller ones? When you're out there, when you're going to Congress and doing all the things that you're doing, I want to put this in the most diplomatic way possible, right? Because I think sometimes we've seen in other places where when you have stuff like that going on, maybe those guys make carve-outs for the people who support them. How do you guys deal with that? When you're out there fighting for suppressor rights, are you doing things like that, or you're still fighting for the folks who aren't on board with you? How does that work?
Yeah. I mean, I think, we're really fighting for everyone, and we understand that there are sometimes conflicting goals, or, people have ideas of how they think something should be done, this way, that way. And, oftentimes it's we've got a multi-pronged approach. Like Knox said in the beginning, it's like, hey, the end goal is we want suppressors out of the NFA. Would we be happy if there was a really good functioning NFA e-form system? Like, yeah, that's a step in the right direction to at least reduce transfer times and things like that.
Yeah.
So same kind of thing, big companies may have, a goal or a direction in mind, and smaller companies may. But that's really where we try and be all inclusive. And like Knox said, we want to have everyone in the fold, regardless of size, so that at least they, are making their voices heard. Really the only voices we're not hearing are the ones that are choosing for one reason or another to not be involved, whether it's they just didn't know ASA was out there, or they've made some choice to not be involved in ASA.
Okay.
But
I mean, when you guys are talking laws, you're not talking any kind of carve-outs, right? Like whatever you're fighting for everyone.
Absolutely, yeah. We fight specifically for the common good, and we're never going to approach members, with pet projects for individual companies. Okay. There might be circumstances that arise where, issues do come up, but at the end of the day, no, like this is what is best for the common good of both, kind of every facet of the community, whether it's manufacturing and selling them or the end users, and balancing that to make sure that we're really working for everybody. Believe it or not, I mean, there are manufacturers that don't want to see the Hearing Protection Act passed. There are a lot of people, some people within the industry, that don't want to see something like that happen.
Why would that be? I mean, I would think that all of us, if we're gun guys, we want more access to suppressors, not less. I mean, that's how my crazy mind works.
Yeah, they're afraid of the unknown. And some people are more resistant to change than others. But from our perspective, our goal will never change. And the day that my board directs me to not work on, ultimately trying to get suppressors out of the National Firearms Act, that's the day that I'm going to resign. Okay. We Owen and I are in this because we care about it. We cut our teeth in the suppressor industry. We love these things and we really believe in them. So this is as much a passion project as it is a profession, which we feel very fortunate about. Okay. Obviously, we'd love to continue to grow, and the more that we can grow, the more effective that we'll be. But nonetheless, we're in it for the right reasons. We are part of that suppressor community. That's why this organization exists. It's not something that dates back hundreds of years. It goes back specifically to 2011, and I wanted to hunt with a suppressor in Georgia. We couldn't. So we formed an organization. We realized at the time the National Rifle Association, NSSF, and all these other groups weren't advocating for suppressors. We said, if they're not going to help, then we will. And they came forward pretty quick. Different organizations. At different times.
I think the bump stock guys could have used that. We might see a world where the people going for the the braces, right? The pistol braces might need some advocacy. Sometimes, listen, you gotta fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
There's a lot of funding on the other side of what we're talking about here. Yeah.
You look at a state like Virginia, right, where we spend a lot of time and we'll continue to spend a lot of time for the foreseeable future because they're coming after guns and suppressors as long as it takes. NRA, a 5 million member organization, was outspent, I believe, 10-1 by one person, Michael Bloomberg. He, through his Everytown organization, the Moms Demand Action and Everytown and the mayors and all that stuff, I think he funneled in $3 to $5 million to that organization alone. And then he set up a separate organization focused on climate change where he funneled in about the same amount of money into that state.
Yeah, I think we just lost him there for a second. Look, I think we'll see. We can very shortly here see. Yeah, can you hear us, Knox? Yeah, we missed the last part. Go ahead, hit us with that again.
Yeah, he funneled in about $10 million into a state level election, which is astronomical.
Yeah. And he's continuing to do it, by the way. I think that's pretty much the reason why he was running, to set himself up so he could do this in every state. And now what I was going to say is I think we could easily see a situation here where trigger manufacturers, lots of different manufacturers here, if they don't have people advocating specifically for what they make, they're going to be in trouble because we're already seeing evidence of them going after these things one at a time. I just really quickly wanted to get this from Richard. You're involved in suppressors and everything like that. You're kind of like old school here. What do you think about what these guys are doing and what they're working for? Do you think that's a good or a bad thing?
Oh, it's a good thing. They seem to be going about it the right way. They seem to be doing a good job at it. Suppressors are going to come off the NFA list. I don't know when, but I know for sure that they are going to come off the NFA list. And I think a lot of that is the more states that start to allow hunting with suppressors, you're going to get all those guys who hunt, or a lot of them, buying a suppressor to hunt with.
Good point.
And look, we all know suppressors are like crack. You can't have one.
Yeah. I bought a 22 suppressor. That was the end of me.
And,
Yeah.
That's the gateway drug.
Oh, yeah. I always tell people I want to get a suppressor. It's like, just get a 22 suppressor.
Yeah.
Just start with that. It's cheap. There's a ton of good ones. You'll have more fun with that than any other suppressor. Well, I don't know. I want one for my 9mm. It's like, you're going to get one for your 9mm. Just start here. Well, how do you know I'm going to get one? Because you're not dead yet. You'll have 10 before this is all done.
Yeah, good point. I think that I hope so. Like money-wise, right, guys? Do you guys feel like you're getting enough funding for this fight that you're making? Do you feel, how do you guys look at this? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because I'm sure the people who do care about this out there are wondering, what can they do to help, right? I think it's good that there's industry behind you. I think lots of things that we're all fighting for needs the industry to be behind it to keep it going. But the people, the folks out there need to actually get behind it too. So, if you guys could just speak about that in the time that we have left.
Yeah.
And speaking, the larger that our coffers are, the larger that our membership base is, the more effective it will be. That allows us to travel on a dime. Where plane tickets, the most expensive plane ticket that I've ever bought was flying to Iowa for a committee hearing that was scheduled in the afternoon, and I needed to be there in the morning. It was like, well, I'm going to pay whatever I'm going to pay. We spent about $1,400 on that plane ticket and did that about a dozen times. It ended up paying off. We got suppressor ownership and hunting legalized in that state.
Yeah, that's cool. That was like a couple of years ago, right? That wasn't too long ago that you got it in Iowa.
Maybe
okay.
15.
Yeah.
So like those sorts of things matter. And to your point about things like trigger manufacturers and bump stock manufacturers needing someone representing them. If you are starting your fight when there's a 5-engine fire, you're never going to put it out.
Yep, you're doomed. Yeah.
That's really a big part of what we're doing. And Richard, to your point, we recognized pretty early on that the state level was A, where we could make change, and B, something that would have a federal impact. That's why we really doubled down on the suppressor hunting stuff. And since we formed in 2011, we've had a direct role in 18 states legalizing suppressor hunting. Whether we drafted legislation, which we did for most of them, going on the ground, registering to lobbying those bills, taking legislators out on demonstrations. This is all the stuff that we do, and we do it behind the scenes. We've been quiet about it for a while, especially early on, because we didn't want to tip our hat and expose our playbook. At this point, our opposition knows, this stuff is out there, and they've honestly kind of viewed some of the stuff that we've done and other organizations in our sphere have done and emulated it, and they've been doing it pretty effectively. It's not rocket science. It just takes manpower. It takes determination and, actually going out and doing it.
Yeah, dedication, commitment to it. Owen, did you want to comment on this also?
Yeah, just kind of to your point of like what does ASA need and where are we going and budgetary wise and things like that. We are. You're looking at the ASA. It's the two of us full time that are the paid employees of the ASA. We operate on a really small budget. We try and be extremely cognizant of the money that our sponsors and our members entrust us with. I know that's a hot button issue right now.
Yeah, lots of people care about that.
Organization, people want to know. Like,
they should, yeah.
Right. And they should care about that. And so just know that that's something we're always looking at. Hey, is this a wise use of the money that we've been entrusted with? We're not a huge organization in terms of members. Like I said, we've got about 5,000 members. Knowing what it costs to be a member, you can kind of extrapolate what that money is. Mm-hmm. And we get about a third of our sponsorship or our funds from public members. We get about a third of our sponsorship from corporate sponsors, and about the other third is made up just through fundraising. We host some raffles throughout the year where you can buy a raffle ticket and have a chance to win suppressors, and our sponsors are generous in donating suppressors and tax stamps to us so that our winners can have those prizes.
Cool.
We are currently running a membership drive, so people can go to cansnotbans.com and join ASA. And at the end of the month, actually middle of July, we're going to give away. We've got about 15 prizes in there: suppressors, we've got ammo, we've got some other cool stuff.
Yeah, the folks out there like free, man. They like that.
Yeah,
they're digging that. And you guys are paying for the tax stamp too?
Yeah, actually, Sponsor Shop, our sponsor, they cover the tax stamp for our winners, so we appreciate that. And again, thanks to our other sponsor companies that donate prizes. But that's just it. We do those about 3 times a year, membership drives, so that it's just a fun way to swell our ranks and also get back to our members. But this one is just kind of on the anniversary of what was going on last year in Virginia. So
okay, all right, yeah. If there's something that we could do, let us know. I appreciate you guys coming on here and talking about it, and if there's like times that come up again where you're like, hey, we would like to come on and talk to the folks, maybe we won't spend the whole time talking about suppressors here. I actually enjoy suppressors myself, so I don't mind talking about it, but if you want to do that, you can let us know, and we'll do what we can do to help you guys out with that.
Awesome.
Motorboater has a question here. I'll try to squeeze it in.
Okay.
I'll try to squeeze it in. He says, what classifies a suppressor? Is there a decibel level that makes it a suppressor? And not a muzzle
ATF
brake?
saying it's a suppressor.
It's a good question, though. It's a good question, right? Because, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Richard's pretty much right. If ATF says it's a suppressor, pretty much any device or contrivance to muffle the sound of a firearm, they've got some legalese in there, but it comes down to ATF determining, hey, we think that's a suppressor. But important point on the federal law stuff is that any part or component specifically designed for a suppressor, ATF says that's a suppressor too. So that's why you don't get to extra baffles laying around that the manufacturer sends
Oil
to you.
filters, lots of things that people out there think they could get away with, and they don't realize people are hip to that nowadays.
And wipes.
Wipes.
Yeah.
Scouring pads, all kinds of things that ATF is suppressors.
Yeah, that's how that's pretty much how that goes. So, I'm sure people are still going to have questions. Probably even after we get off air and people are looking at this, they may have questions. So, where do you guys suggest that they go to if they want to contact you, find out more about this, or ask questions?
Best thing, email is great. Info at amsuppressor.com. Info at amsuppressor.com is our email, and I respond to a lot of those. You can hit us up on our Facebook or Instagram. But email's the fastest if you need a response from us. So.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And that works for if they want to talk to either one of you two guys, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Richard, if the folks out there want to talk to you and get more of your sage wisdom, and actually, I mean, listen, I thought you'd be great to come on and talk about this because you've been doing this for a long time. So how can the folks get in touch with you, Rich?
They can email me at richard@bwefirearms.com. Go to bwefirearms.com. I'm on most of the social media sites, all at whatever variation they made me use of bwefirearms.com.
Yeah, you can find us on, I don't know if you're on Parler yet, or any of you guys are on Parler, PALERIM. That's kind of like a conservative thing that's popping out there right now. So you can find, I'm Hank Strange on there. I don't know if you're on there yet.
I'm not. My wife is. And I'm like, what the hell? Why does your phone keep dinging?
You don't need another thing.
Parlor thing.
Yeah. Brian Quick says, I'm almost out of here. Brian Quick says the ATF ruled a muzzle brake SIG was trying to come up with was deemed a silencer. It was several inches long, but had no encased sleeve. Still ruled against SIG. I think I heard about that.
Yeah, that's been a while.
Yeah,
now. 4 years maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe long.
That's the SIG monocore that they said, oh no, it's not a suppressor.
Mm-hmm.
Idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it was threaded at the back for a tube, so I think
got
him.
Yeah.
What a bunch of schmuck.
Yeah. You're breaking up here at the end. What was that? Say that again.
Yeah, but can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. I'd say in SIG's defense, I'm always glad to see when people push the limits with ATF as to what what.
Stop asking ATF stuff.
Oh yeah.
Stop writing letters, please.
Certainly be cautious with it. Yeah.
Yeah, less of those letters.
Yeah. I've even heard don't ask what you want the answer to.
Okay, I'm not sure what you said there. Say that again. Say that last part again.
I've heard ATF people say, don't ask a question you don't want the answer to.
Okay, yeah, don't ask a question you don't want the answer to. That's what he's saying there. Absolutely. Okay, listen, so I'm going to run the end here. I'm just going to run the end thing. You guys stay right there. Don't go anywhere. Okay, thanks for joining us, guys. Big shout out here to Franklin Armory for sponsoring the show. Make sure you guys subscribe, smash the thumbs up as well. Ring the bell so you can be notified every time we go live. We're going to rip this audio and put it on iTunes and other places that you get your audio podcasts from. Thanks so much to Owen and Knox from the American Suppressor Association for coming in, taking our questions, taking you guys' questions. That was awesome. Of course, Richard from BWE Firearms, also great. Great time. Good having you here, guys. We will see you tomorrow. We are out of here for now. Anyone has any final comments? Final comments from anyone before I hit the button? No? So now you got all the internet. Nothing to say. Nothing to say. Owen's got
Everybody's
nothing.
frozen.
Was he frozen or just? Oh, okay. He was. All right. I'm gonna leave it at that. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you all tomorrow. We're out. Peace.